Now. Oh, good. Okay, so good evening or good afternoon or good whatever. I don't know where you are. I hope you had a good day or it's starting well, depending on your time zone. So welcome to the hidden power of CSS Pseudo-Elements. Before I start, don't bother take screenshots or whatever. I will share a PDF of this presentation on Twitter. Also, you have question tabs already said, but in the tool you have a questions tab. Don't hesitate to use it if you have any question. I will answer it at the end because while I'm presenting, I can't see the questions thanks to Keynote. So I'm Geoffrey. I'm a lead designer, sometimes UX designer, depending on who's asking. I work at Foyer Group in a team of 10 designers. Foyer is a Luxembourgish insurance company, for your information. I'm almost a former front-end developer, and yeah, I say almost because I can't quit. I'm not an addict. Okay. Anyway, here is an overview of what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to define pseudo-elements, so we are on the same page. Then I will talk about the reason I bring back this topic on the table. I will pass by the basics of using them to put everybody again on the same page. And then I will show you some fun and sometimes useful also demonstration and code. And to finish, I will show you the future of pseudo-elements. Not all the future. Okay, let's go. What are those pseudo-elements? So in CSS, there are two kinds of pseudo-things. There are pseudo-elements. They are the ones acting like a new HTML element in your code. And you have pseudo-classes. They help you with targeting more precisely elements of your document. Here is an example of a pseudo-class. So you have two paragraphs. I target the first one with a pseudo-class. It's like I added a class on the first element, like so. So first child is a pseudo-class because it can be replaced by a class on one or multiple elements in your HTML code, okay? Let's take this simple paragraph now. So for pseudo-elements, I'm going to make the first letter bold. It's like I added a span element within my HTML to style it, like so. So first letter is a pseudo-element because it replaces somehow an HTML element. That's the difference between a pseudo-element and a pseudo-class. Okay, to keep this talk simple, I'm going to talk about before and after, but they are not alone in the pseudo-element universe. You have also first letter, first line, selection, and so on. And you have new ones also, but I will talk about those new ones at the end of the talk. What's define do? So they generate content. Before and after generate content. Literally, we will see where, what, and how afterwards. So they are in the family of tree abiding pseudo-elements, meaning that they can create new elements outside the target element. They can't do it. I don't know if I said can't, but they can't create new elements outside the target element. There are other kind of pseudo-element families. You have typographic pseudo-elements, like first letter, first line, which allows you to style typographic stuff. You have highlight pseudo-element, like selection, which allows you to style what the user highlighted on your page. So yeah, you can change the aspect of the selection within a web page. To sum up, before and after the pseudo-element, it generates a content before or after the content of the target. Almost all known CSS can be applied to this new created content. When you have typographic pseudo-element, you can't do that. For instance, the dash or numbers just before a list item is a generated content, not with before or after, but still it's a generated content. We come back to all of this with code and visual example, no worries. So, why? Yes, tell me why, Geoffrey. You're right, I'm digging up an old topic. Pseudo-elements exist since 2003 and are in candidate recommendations since 2011, so it's kind of old. I like to talk about all things while everybody else is talking about grid layout, flexbox, clamp functions. I'm talking about it also on CSS tricks if you missed the last articles. Because pseudo-elements are either unknown or underestimated, but it's not the only one misunderstood or forgotten concept. I will talk about this example. Even the concept of classes seems to be unknown. In this tweet, Max asks people what's the color of the text of those divs just by reordering the classes in HTML. Most people are wrong here. The right answer is both blue. So I can totally imagine that showing you all CSS properties with demonstration and code will be useful for everyone at some point. And even Rachel Andrew said, don't forget that old CSS still exists and is useful. You don't need to use fancy things for every effect, sorry. I'm tired. Okay, so now I spent a bit of time on the context. Let's dive into concrete things. So, the syntax is quite common CSS. Okay, you have your selector. Here it's a P, followed by double colons and your pseudo-element, a P4 here. You have then a content property with an empty string as value at least. You have other kind of values. You will see that later. You can keep that in mind, that one precisely, because I will use it a lot. So, good to know. Pseudo-element and pseudo-class syntax did share the same unique colon mark for a while. So if you cross path with old code, you could find just one colon. Now pseudo-elements have to be declared with double colons, even if modern browsers support both with one colon or double colons. I talk about before and after. You would ask, okay, but before and after what exactly? So do you recall the box model of an element? We have the content box, where lays the very content of an element. Around that, we have the padding box, which allows spacing between the content and the border box. And to finish, we have the margin box. Okay, and where do we put before and after? It's just here and there. So we are not going far. They land right before and after the element within a content box. It can be before or after a text node or a bunch of children. Yeah, sorry for the French. Slides were in French before this talk. So the pseudo-elements here lays next to the text node. Okay. And here, sorry for the Latin, but I think you get it, right? So here is what Firefox shows when I write the previous code. As you can see, the before and after are really close to the text content. Good things with browser now, you can easily select those pseudo elements within the DOM to debug your CSS. The only thing you have to declare in CSS is at least an empty content to make the pseudo element appears. Okay, you can create pseudo-element on everything unless it's a replaced content element. So a replaced content element in HTML is kind of when a new content takes place of your HTML declaration, like an image, an iframe, a video, audio, options, etc., etc. About the input elements are not supposed to be replaced content. Those are widgets. It's the name, but it works the same, meaning that pseudo-element doesn't work with it. So don't try to do it on input. It doesn't work. Okay, so here are the main known values for content. The left column is for resetting your content, so it's not really interesting. The one interesting is this middle column. I will detail it a little bit more after. And the right one is for typography, mostly needed for block codes, site elements to replace the open and close code characters. So let's dive into the string, URL, attribute, and counter values. String first. So the string value can be used that way. An empty value. It's the value I use the most. It does nothing by default. The second code simply add a piece of text. Okay, so it will display a piece of text. And you can also inject a Unicode and use it as icon. Of course, the plop example doesn't make sense. You don't want to push text string via CSS. It's not really maintainable nor accessible unless you just want it decorative. So the URL function allows you to load an image. The issue is that it really behaves way weird as fuck. Like on the bottom right, my initial text. Okay, this big shuriken is a 512 pixel wide image, and as you can see, the 8 result for the image is still 16, but it doesn't care. I don't know why. So I decided to gently ask my pseudo-element to resize a little bit thanks to inline block display and explicit dimension. Apparently, it still doesn't care. Well, right. Then I tried with an inline flex model, more modern. It might fix the issue. It worked, but it worked only for Firefox. So it's a bug on Firefox, but it worked. Too bad. The only right solution here is to use a background image. So as I said, you can do whatever you want with it in CSS. So avoid using URL function and use background image instead. It's just don't work URL. Value for content attribute. The attribute function allows you to get the string value of an attribute. So you can use all the attributes you want. In this example, I target the links with a href attribute, and I put it right after my link. Don't pay attention in the colors on the example. The string I did is in black. In black is part of the link. In blue, just for me to show you the content value. So it's displayed the attribute value, href, and the value is en. So counter value offers you the ability to generate string based on a CSS counter. If you didn't know that we can build counters in CSS, I will show you later how we can use it. And it displays something like that. Okay. So now that you know that you already use it in your code base, I talked now to the old developers before the screens. Now, do you remember the ClearFix solution with this ugly div? I suppose you do. Maybe you already met this version with a single class instead. The solution equal to the previous one, but you do it directly in CSS. because floating elements have been added by CSS. Why should we add a div clearfix in our HTML, right? So let's do it in CSS. But who cares? Nobody uses floating anymore unless you put your hands in dirty old code. Okay. Same for font icon. You may already know this HTML syntax. It adds a before pseudo-element and a font face with the right icon font to replace the Unicode by an icon. Pretty simple, but it uses a pseudo-element. You also have duotone icons with 2 colors, and it uses usually the before and the after two works. So last time I gave this talk, it was a workshop, and people really liked it, but it was for 2 or 3 hours, I don't remember. I invite you to download the folder with some exercise in it. The name of the URL is related to the previous meetup name, no worries. It was 2 months ago, so it's still the same content. You can go for it. My next demonstration will give you the solutions, but you will be able to rework on it later if you want to. I suppose we learn best when we practice. Okay. The link is still on the bottom right. No worries. Take your time if you want to download it. Also, these slides will be exported and shared with you afterwards on Twitter. So here is an example of an exercise. With this one div container, I will ask you to create this shape within the div. And whether you want to code or just imagine the solution, here are 2 possible outcomes. You write the solution on the paper, like on the left image. You write down a piece of CSS code, or you do both if you prefer. I suggest you to follow the next slide as demonstration and do the exercises at home if you want to play with it. Otherwise, this talk is going to last 3 hours. So one of the exercises is that one. So for one of your projects, you have been asked to add a print function to some pages. But when you print pages, links are not visible or actionable anymore. Okay, use pseudo-element to display URL between brackets, like in the example. How you do that? The basic idea is to target all the links that are not internal page anchors that start with a hash. So the circumflex accent allows us to say anchors with href attributes starting with HTTP. See it like a regular expression. But maybe all the other links are internal links. So by default, I will add my domain before the attribute value. So you have an example of concatenation. So it's just a space, a white space. And of course, I have to wrap all of that into a media print query. In the real life, so the query is it applies the CSS code only when you activate the print function of the browser. So in real life, you will have to take into account other kind of protocol like tel, mail-to, or simply internal page anchors starting with hash symbol, for instance. Another fun exercise. One of the pages of your website displays a list of files in different formats. Propose a CSS code to help distinguish the multiple extensions. So in the folder you maybe already have downloaded, I already load a font icon. So here, for all my links, I declare a before element with a default icon. I give you a bit of time to read it. I need to drink. So here, then, when my link ends with PDF, I change the color of the icon and the icon. And same for the doc files. Okay, so I use a asterisk because you can have a doc or docx for this kind of file. Okay, so the counterpart. Here is a great typographical example, the titles numbering. You are in a big document with a long text like thesis or something like that. You want to bring a structure by numbering all the titles. Use pseudo-element to add numbers before the titles. So how can we do that? First, if you don't know counter functions in CSS, you can't really guess this one. Okay. First of all, we have to create a counters. Here, it says, each time I cross a H1 in my DOM, I want to reset my H2 counter. The default value for the counter is 0. Same thing with my H3 counter. It will be resetted after each H2. Okay. And now I write my number before H2 by using the counter function with a upper Roman style. So I don't know if you are familiar with those numbering styles, but they are the same than the list style values for ordered lists in HTML. So you have upper Roman, decimal with leading, I think. Anyway, of course, I need to increment H2 value. It will be incremented, then printed. So even if the reset value is 0, the first value will be 1. Okay, we do the same with for our H3, but here we use two counter functions. The first one to get our H2 value, and the second one for our H3. I didn't use any numbering style here, so it's the decimal by default. And then I decided to add some styling to get the counters out of the flow when screen width is big enough. And that's it. I hope you're following. A more practical example here with nested links. You want to make the wildcard clickable, but also the author and category links actionable, so the element in colors. Use pseudo-element to solve this issue. Pro tips: absolute and relative position are your best friend. And I hope you are at ease with positioning. So I decided to use the link on the title. So you have title on the link, right? And extend its area by using a pseudo-element. I can position my before pseudo-element in absolute because I know that my article has a position relative already set. Don't forget that an absolute positioning is made using the first parent with a position as a reference, and by default is your body. Not yours, but the one of the web page. So here the pseudo-element is represented by this violetish layer. Okay, so the pseudo-element is covering everything. And then to push the links on a layer over the pseudo-element, a position relative will do the job. Just that one. It works with position relative alone just because all my links are next siblings to my title link. So it kind of everything at the bottom of your HTML is always on the layer on the top layer. If we can see HTML like layers. If it wasn't the case, I would have to use the index with a 1 value at least. But you can already use the index if you are not sure of your structure. And then what is that already? Oh yeah, for a better micro interaction styling, you can use a box shadow either on article over or link focus before pseudo-element. And as you can see in the video, while hovering, the state of the link is changing. So that means our pseudo-element work. Okay. In order to match recommendation in terms of ergonomy and accessibility, we make the clickable area bigger using the same technique. But instead of using a 0 value for top, bottom, right, and left, we use a negative bigger value like -8 or -16 everywhere. So I put the red halo, it's representing the pseudo-element, but it's totally transparent. But we had to use a pointer event property on Firefox to make it clickable for some reason. And it's really well supported in iOS and Android. Okay, a less practical use, but fancy effect. A bit of fun with a stack effect, a paper stack effect. This effect is used sometimes to represent a pile of elements you gathered or you are drag and dropping, for instance. So you can recreate it with pseudo-element. So how to do it? First, you need a kitten, but that's not all. You also need to style the first item this way. Position relative to make this element the new reference for pseudo-element. A bit of padding, background, and shadow to create the photography effect. I put the same background and shadow onto my pseudo-element. And I give them a strictly same size, padding included, than the stack element, thanks to pseudo, position, and 0 to all 4 directions. I need the z index to -1 to put the pseudo elements behind the kitten. And I simply rotate the pseudo element. So there is a -10 degree and -5 degree for a little transformation. And you can, as I applied the transition property on the pseudo element, I can even create this effect by changing the transform value on over. Fancy. For the mobile version of your menu, you want to create this fancy animated effect. You can do it with only one span as an icon, and the rest is just a HTML span with a menu text. So the menu button selector here is for the entire menu button, not only the icon. Inline block display and padding bottom allows me to prepare a bit of space for the icon just above the text. Let's take care of the icon now. So it's a span, as I said. So I need to make it a block of some kind because it's inline elements by default. And the relative position makes it my new reference for pseudo-elements. You're used to it now. Then I make a big selector to give the 3 elements the same with 8 background border radius, and I prepare for a transition. But for the moment, my pseudo-elements don't really exist, so I only have one element display visually. And now what I do, I make the pseudo-element alive, so I need the content empty, and put one at -9 pixels, one at 9 pixels from their original place, and that's it. We have a burger icon. And finally, when the button is activated, represented here by my .on selector, the middle dash is made transparent. And the two others are slightly rotated and translated to form this close icon. And as the transition is applied, we have an animation. Okay, so custom radio buttons. Yeah, another really useful case is when you need to create custom radio buttons or checkboxes. You can do it again with pseudo-element, of course. To do that, the HTML is pretty standard. One paragraph which wraps one input radio and one label. The important thing you have to remember is to always link the input and the label together by giving them the same value for ID and for attributes. Okay, so it's the two attributes next to each other. CSS part now. First thing, we create our new positioning reference. You are used to it. Then I prepare my two pseudo-elements by positioning them regardless their size using 50% value. They will be used to create our radio button. So at the moment we have nothing visual. Okay, then I create the box being checked. The original radio button is hidden thanks to the background. Okay, it's a white background. It makes it still accessible for screen readers and keyboard navigation. Interesting for keeping a good level of accessibility on your code. So here I used pixels, but I encourage you to use EM and REM units for a better scalability. Okay, so next, and I finally create my little dot to represent the selected item. This one is animated from scale 0 to scale 1 when checked to create a fancy effect. The second CSS selector is where the magic happens. I select the checked input and target the direct sampling to modify the after pseudo-element to make it scale. And we're done. Okay, last detailed demonstration. Afterwards, I will show you some fun stuff you can do with a bit less of code. This one, fractured text effect. You can reproduce the effect. It's inspired from an article by Mandy Michael. The HTML is my starting point. You have a data heading as attribute to duplicate the text and use it as pseudo-element content value. The goal is to avoid duplicating the text, the real text in HTML. So remember the attribute function you can use to render a string value in your pseudo-element? Here it is. I position the two pseudo-elements the same way and prevent things from overflowing. You will see why now. I put a salmon color on the after pseudo-element and transform it a little bit and give it a 48% 8. That's why I needed to hide the overflowing part. So I got a truncated text. And now I do exactly the same with the other part, the other pseudo-elements, but this one is here to hide the upper part of the text. So it's not really visible. It's a white text. The browser tries to smooth your text always, and sometimes the smoothing is debatable. So I needed to use text shadow to avoid having a gray halo around the white text. That's why I have a weird text shadow declaration at the bottom of the code. And you can even animate it if you feel like a ninja. Fancy. Not really useful, but fancy. So let's go further. Do you remember the URL syntax, the one with the weird big shuriken effect? Don't use it. But if you do, know that you can add an alternative text, like you are supposed to do it with alt attributes in HTML. Okay, it's with a slash. And you are also able to add kind of a content stack with fallbacks, meaning here that if your browser doesn't support move files, it falls back to the PNG and next to the text. It's comma, okay, to separate the value. And absolutely nothing related, but you can also create this sort of photo filters with pseudo-element and image blending. Yeah, no worries if you don't follow everything on the next slides. There is a demo link for every demo, so you can easily catch back. So you take a dog this time, not a kitten, and you apply magical CSS filters like contrast, brightness, saturation. Okay, and then you take another image source randomly with a black background. It's better for merging. You put it on your puppy, and then you apply a mix blend mode on it to create a radiant effect. Yeah, it's just visual and fancy. CSSgram made by Yuna uses the same technique and try to recreate the Instagram filtered pseudo-element, blending mode, and filters. Okay. Not really fancy, but a bit more useful if you need to break a grid, and you can do it with pseudo-elements. So on a project where the code was untouchable, it's a real project, I was only allowed to use CSS, not even JavaScript. The grid system was in Flexbox, and it's important to note that it was in Flexbox already. And the redesign put the first item on the top of the row alone. Okay, so on the top you have the previous one, and on the bottom you have the new design. So what did I do? To do so, I asked the first element to be order -1. So you have a property called order in Flexbox, and so I can be sure it will always be the first one. Then I create a pseudo element in the row parent. It takes its place next to the first element because the first one is -1 and the before is 0 or 1 by default. I don't remember. I think it's 0. So I ask him gently to cover 100%, and that's it. Voila, it's done. You can also build really advanced shadows using both pseudo-element and box shadow declarations. You have a demonstration link. You can consult the page because it includes a X-ray function to allow you to better understand how the code works. So we will see the before and after pseudo-element displayed directly in the demonstration. You can also create a fancy effect like snake effect. Yes, you could use SVG also, but it's talk about CSS Pseudo-Element, so I did it with Pseudo-Element. You can also combine animatable properties and pseudo-elements to build more complex animation, like these ones. I built for the redesign of Stephanie's portfolio. And for the same website, I made this destroyed menu icon and animation. You know how to build the icon now, so you should be able to reproduce it. Yeah, it's a challenge, do it. And if you really feel like a ninja, you can even reproduce the lightbox effect with only CSS, pseudo-element, and element function, but it's working only for Firefox. So I'm sorry, I'm just showing off a little bit. So it's only CSS, okay? You really have to think hard to be able to do that, but I'm sure you can do it on your own now. No pressure. Yet another fractal text effect, but easier to make thanks to clip path and the polygon value. It's another demonstration by Mandy Michael. If you don't follow her, you should do it. You can also animate it. Yeah, by the way, I cannot lie to you because you can create pseudo-element on images, but only when they are not loaded. Indeed, the browser uses it to display the alt content value when the image doesn't load. So there is a bridge. I used it to customize before and after pseudo-element when images are not loaded. It's kind of a customized error. The support is for this precise feature is not completely good, but it's kind of okay. It's just when an image is broken. So I hope you have the error like never. So some advantages. Pardon, sorry. So some advantages of pseudo-elements. I can do it. You should agree with now they allow to generate content quickly. They allow to improve usability or readability. They allow you to create purely visual stuff. And mastered, they allow you to fine-tune everything, even a grid system. I go through support quickly, really quickly. Pseudo-elements are pretty much perfectly supported. CSS transition 2, Blend mode a bit less, but you know, Internet Explorer, maybe you can drop it. I hope so. And the same for filters. Pointer event is okay. I needed it on Firefox one time, so Firefox support it. Clip path for the second fracture text effect demo, a bit less, but it's kind of good. Elements, yeah, Firefox only, but you know what? You really don't need it. So it was just for the CSS only Lightbox demonstration. It's just a demonstration I wanted to show off. A bit of accessibility. The support for reading the content of pseudo-element is pretty good. So if it's content generated with CSS, you might think that the support is not good, but the only issue seems to be Internet Explorer 11 on Windows with JAWS and NVIDIA. But I don't know the market part here. So I've got 4 last slides on the future of pseudo-element content, but it's mostly for print purpose and rich text content. So if you don't care, you can go for 5-minute breaks, or otherwise follow me till the end. So for example, the target counter value allows you to generate a counter related to a targeted element. The content here takes 2 parameters, the href content as target and number of page as template. And it displays something like that. We talk about it, page 23. Another future ability is to use target text, but here the content is generated from the text within the targeted element. So I display something like that. Oh, it's in French. So instead of a precise number, it's the title of the chapter. So for the 2 previous functions, the goal is to target an element and extract its content in a way or another to use it in our pseudo-element. It's perfect to create dynamic internal anchors. A more graphical function is leaders. That allows you to create a pattern to visually link content together, like so. Here with the dot pattern and in combination with text target content function. Good. Last but my favorite, because I needed it every time, will allow you to generate, so the content function will allow you to generate string content based on the content of the target. So remember our fractured text, we could do it without our data heading attribute, just by saying I need this content and I need it to put it there. Okay. Other pseudo-elements coming are already here. We have in the tree building pseudo-element section marker, the pseudo-elements before the list item. So it's already working on most of the browsers. We have placeholder, the suggestion within form fields. Okay, you can style it. In the highlight pseudo-element, you have also the selection, but you have the inactive selection, same as selection, but when inactive, so when your cursor is elsewhere. You have spelling and grammar error for text marked as wrong by the user agent. You know, you have the little waves when you have a spelling check. You can style it. Some resources that help me build this little talk, so mostly definitions, a bit of accessibility support, and you have also Mandy Michael and Rachel Andrew website and Twitter account. And if you have any question, I don't buy it so far. I will read the question on the tabs. And if you have any question on other CSS feature, I'm available here for like 10 minutes or maybe a bit more, and on Twitter at any time. So here's my contact info. And I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
Hey. Oh, here is the X-ray function I talk about.
And Jens, okay, say something on the chat. In for using pseudo-element with flexbox when using justify elements, space around the space are both and are half as wide as between the element. Just add before and after on the space are evenly distributed.
3 questions. Okay, so Jean-François, is that you?
Yes, I was reading the Jens. Sorry for your name, Jens, but I was reading what he say in the chat.
Okay, what about pseudo-element with web component? Good question. If you wrap a video in a web component just for fun, you do that for fun? Okay. Could we apply a pseudo-element? So you cannot apply on video. You cannot apply a pseudo-element on video because it's a replace content. But I suppose web components support pseudo-elements. But it's a supposition. You have to test it. But yeah, so I suppose it works. I can answer it for sure. Sorry. Did you have checked Houdini CSS API? No, not at all.
Yes, it was still me.
I'm kind of shy with Houdini CSS API, so no, I didn't test it. But that's a good point. I really should test because everybody talk about it. So I really need to.
Yeah, the idea was the idea behind this question was more about your position about new APIs that are coming, but lead by JS code. For example, Houdini CSS API, the Paint API, lets you create some of the effect you done with pseudo-element and before.
Oh yeah.
But with JS, so
I see. I think you can mix everything. It's CSS. It's fresh API, so it's really old. So I suppose you can easily mix it. And my position is not clear about it because I don't know Houdini CSS, so I can't I can't answer.
Yes, but
easily.
The question was more about do you think it's better to use CSS or JS?
I can't answer it.
Okay.
For me, everything that is related to style should be in CSS. I'm kind of old school about that, but everything you do for style, it's on CSS. So it's my position.
Okay. Okay. What was the biggest challenge you solved with pseudo-element?
Good question. I think the grid system I showed you earlier was a good one. I was stuck, and then I think I should really try a pseudo-element and break that fucking grid, because I was stuck and I was like, I can't use JavaScript. I can't modify the HTML. So yeah, it's I suppose the biggest one. But again, it's just pseudo-element and styling. So it's supposed to be for decoration or for having fun. But yeah, sometimes it can be really, really useful. Like the one when I break the grid.
I have a new question that came in my mind just now about the accessibility. You talk about the fact that some reader can read the content to help the user, but if you use an icon, a font icon, can we use emoji or something like that to be sure that it could be easily read, maybe?
Okay,
Because,
I see.
because if I use Unicode, I imagine that Unicode is not very useful for a reader.
Yeah, I have another way to see it. It's that you don't want, usually, you don't want an icon to be alone, meaning that you want it with text, because icons are not really understandable on their own. Okay.
Okay.
Because you need a bit of interpretation to say, okay, this icon is representing this kind of action. For instance, I have a share screen icon. I know that icon, but maybe someone new on the interface don't know that icon. So the text just under the icon is really useful for me. It's the same for screen readers. You can easily have any icon you want. Oftentimes you even want to use the speech property in CSS with the icon you declare to avoid the screen reader reading the icon and the text below or next to it.
Okay.
So usually icons are really here for decoration. And if you want the screen reader to read something, you can use the as-er only technique, which hide the text for everybody unless screen readers.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, totally. It was very fun. Thank you. So attendees, are you too shy to ask questions? Maybe.
We can join a table, maybe.
Yes.
Jump from a table to another.
I think we can do that. But thank you again. It was very, very lots of very good tricks, very precise.
Thanks for the
really
feedback.
Enjoyed it.
And thanks for the invitation.
Okay, so if you was too shy to ask question, I encourage you to stay a little bit, and you can ask Geoffrey.
You can also write me something on Twitter or on the chat in private if you are too shy.
Okay, so let me just get the presentation. See you.
See ya.